Everything begins in a hospital room numbered 666. A guy is tied to the bed, smiling calmly. Another person with white hair approaches, saying that the time has come and asks if he wants to say anything. The guy, expressionless, says he is sure it will be like the book and electricity will heal his body. The man then performs an extremely precise act and electricity surges through the boy on the bed. You can even see the poor guy's skeleton, and the alarm in the room sounds. Immediately, the doctors rush in and take the charred boy away. In the ambulance, everyone is confused. The white-haired guy asks what happened. One of the doctors scowls and says to take this lunatic with them too. Observing the ambulance departure, someone comments that one of the patients is an astronomer and the other was a medical professor. Although they are quite eccentric, theoretically, they have respectable hobbies. The only problem is that these two patients from room 666 always try to kill someone when they have an episode. At the emergency center where the boy was taken, the man asks how he feels while holding a needle. The boy smiles, saying that the acupuncture points really relax his body. The white-haired man asks if it's the little needle he placed on his forehead. The guy in the bed says maybe it is. A circle appeared in front of him with a system activation notice. On that day, on Taishan Mountain, a fire cat was wreaking havoc. The reporter warned of the dangers and said that warriors had already been sent to deal with the monster. Meanwhile, in the surgical center, the system detected that the new master had a problem in his head. 3 minutes before the surgery began, the doctors asked what the lunatic did this time. The man explained that he tied a little string and shocked him. His heart was beating at 250 per second, and they were going to anesthetize him. Despite being shocked, he said he felt very well. The burns around his skin were just impurities being cleaned. The doctor berated him, saying it was ridiculous to have burned himself because of idiocy. The guy didn't react and said it was better not to use anesthesia because he liked to use pain to train his mind. Seeing the inhaler approach, he said he wouldn't pay if he were anesthetized. The doctor ignored him, saying a psychiatric patient like him had no money anyway. The protagonist kept saying anesthesia was useless and his mental power. The boy went to sleep, remembering that in childhood, his mother was always exasperated by his antics. At 11 years old, he tried to cut off a useless piece of flesh. After many crazy actions, his mother took him to a psychiatric hospital. While she looked at the results, he asked her to throw him from the 5th floor. The record said he wasn't a danger to society, but was a danger to himself. In the VIP room, the white-haired guy was eating a banana. As soon as the protagonist opened his eyes, he said he was about to level up and needed to be hit with a needle. The white-haired guy agreed, and the protagonist asked if he would use an Earth-level technique. The guy said it wasn't. It was a new version, the universe version, and then stabbed the needle into his arm. After finishing, he asked how the boy felt. The boy said he was hearing voices in his head, and his friend asked what they were saying. He tried to speak, but his heartbeat was just dropping. The doctors were called in frantically to help him, while the strongest man's system activated. Later, the exhausted doctors, having performed surgery all night, celebrated with food brought by a wife. However, as soon as he put it in his mouth, a nurse informed him that the crazy patient had hurt himself again. He threw the food on the floor, questioning how it was possible. She apologized, saying they were not used to dealing with such people. At the psychiatric hospital, a guy asked if they would need a grave for the boy. The chief named Shihag said no. Unfortunately, the protagonist, Lin Fan, was still alive. It was best not to prepare a grave until it was absolutely certain he was dead. When the phone rang, it was the hospital where Lin Fan was, informing them they had just performed surgery and the lunatic had hurt himself again. Shihag turned to the boy, saying they might need a grave after all. Lilifo said he didn't want to deal with the boy anymore and would take him back to their place. Shihag, however, doesn't accept it and says there's no way he's keeping this lunatic in the hospital. He hangs up the phone and slams it on the table. Meanwhile, in front of the room, the white-haired guy wonders why the boy hasn't gotten up. Sitting on the bench looking all innocent, he's curious about the voice in Lin Fan's head. He takes out some needles, suggesting it might be a good idea to try again. The crazy guy uses them all on himself and faints on the bench. In the operating room, the doctor mentions that when he was called to this place, it said he would gain experience with extreme cases. He didn't expect it to be this kind of thing. He had already saved this kid 48 times. He starts to cry, and the nurses wipe the boy's tears. A message appears in front of the protagonist's face from the system, asking if he wants to strengthen his body. Seeing he can't respond, the system decides to choose on its own and selects yes. The body strengthening process begins with a 36-hour countdown. The news continues to report on the creatures appearing, making life difficult for everyone in the city. Outside, Lai Leifu is leaning against the ambulance, thinking everyone is late. Eventually, the nurses and the guys bring Lin Fan's body, saying everything finally went well. Leifu tells them to hurry and get the kid into the ambulance. When the driver arrives, Leifu insists on driving to ensure the kid is taken properly. Just as he's accelerating, one of the nurses asks him to wait. She informs him that the doctor who performed the surgery asked her to give him something. He receives a mask with "I quit" written on it. At the psychiatric hospital, the owner is praying to Amitabha, begging God for Lin Fan not to return. However, he hears the sound of the ambulance and knows the kid is coming. Leifu parks and immediately pulls Lin Fan out. Shihaji comments that there's no need for such haste, the surgery just finished. Approaching the boys, he says that for the sake of their friendship, it would be better if they went back to the hospital. Leifu drops his knees, saying he can't take them back or all the doctors at his hospital will go crazy. Shihagi feels awkward, not expecting the guy to beg so much. Leifu grabs his shoulder, saying he's sure he cares deeply for the boys. He accelerates the ambulance, saying he can keep both stretchers. Everyone remains silent, knowing the poor owner isn't happy. He approaches Lin Fan and asks how he's feeling. As always, Lin Fan says he's fine, but the hospital staff isn't. On the other side, the white-haired lunatic claims he's perfect too. The poor director simply tells them to take them to the room. Back in 666, they're now in straitjackets. Lin Fan smiles, saying the voice in his head told him the body's strengthening is complete. He feels incredibly powerful. A friend comments that it's amazing they actually succeeded. Lin Fan smiles back, saying the electricity and universal acupuncture really work. The two psychopaths are smiling, and Lin Fan asks if they should try the hammer method again. People are standing at the door, and the director finds it strange that they're so calm. The nurses don't even want to mention that they asked for the hammer to hit each other. Shihag walks away smiling, saying everything is finally under control. Meanwhile, under the moonlight, a girl walks through the city. As she fiddles with her phone, something approaches from behind. Seeing what it is, she gets scared and screams, but is devoured by something. The next morning, Lin Fan wakes up and easily breaks out of the straitjacket. He goes to Zhang and says he's come to save him. Once freed, Fang comments that Lin Fan's abs are very defined and wants to touch them. He pokes him a few times, saying he's very strong. Our boy explains that it's the result of cultivation. His body still has 17 hours left to be fully strengthened. In the corridor, a guy is fiddling with the wires until he's covered by a shadow and is terrified of what it could be. Something touches his shoulder and he turns to see Zhang saying hi. The electrician seems to recognize his face since Shihagi introduces the patients from room 666 to everyone. In that hospital, they are more dangerous than any awakened monster. Zhang smiles and says hi, while the electrician trembles. Amidst this distraction, Lin Fan grabs the hammer and runs off, with Zhang retreating in front of him. The electrician was worn out, thinking that place was really strange. He went to the toolbox and noticed his hammer was missing. Immediately, he heard noises coming from the room and wondered what it was. As the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. He went to the window to see what was happening. In front of the stretcher, Zhang was tenderizing the meat. The guy trembled and asked if he had seen everything. The poor electrician ran off, shouting that there was a psychopath upstairs. The scene changes, showing the electrician being carried by the doctors, insisting he doesn't want to go back. They are taking him towards the room while he screams that it was all covered in blood. Upon arrival, everything seems peaceful, with the two calmly lying in bed. The only thing present is a small mess on the floor, and they claim to be drinking Sprite. Shihag calms down a bit and tells the electrician that, as he can see, nothing is happening there. The guy says he understands and just wants his hammer to leave and never return, unless they double his payment. Shihag asks about the hammer and orders it to be returned immediately. Lin Fan, somewhat confused, asks if it's the hammer he had kept. Everyone finds it a bit peculiar. He takes it out of the cart and asks if that's what they wanted. Shihag confirms. Lin Fan tells him to come and get it, but the director, terrified, says to place it on the ground. Lin Fan refuses, saying the director must come and take it from his hand. The director, scared because tomorrow is his birthday, feels he must show the others not to fear these boys and agrees to go. People are moved by his bravery. He approaches with his heart racing and takes the hammer. Everyone congratulates him for returning alive. He gives the hammer back to the electrician, assuring there's nothing to fear, but the electrician notices the poor director is sweating heavily. Night falls and news about monsters continues. Some crazies are talking, one saying the girl on TV is his daughter. Another old man looks and asks if he's the brother-in-law. They embrace emotionally and people just watch these antics. Zhang nearby asks Lin Fan if he knows the girl. He confirms, saying she's his girlfriend. Zhang, appearing to believe him, asks if he's sure. An announcement about monsters near Qinshang Street is made. The girl on a platform asks if she should go hunt. Confident, having 4 level 2 powers, her name is Xiang Yang, a 16-year-old healer student. A guy with a talisman says it's a good idea, telling them to go and show their potential. She gets excited, saying they are elite students. Back at the asylum, it's said today is February 29th, but Zhang insists it's March 7th. Lin Fan points out that Zhang doesn't have a watch, but he claims he has a Rolex. A guy with glasses appears, asking if they're talking about Rolexes. He confirms it's a Rolex, but says it's broken. However, as a professional and recognizing it as a masterpiece, he offers to fix it for free. He spits on his hand and tells him to look again. Zhang looks down and sees his Rolex. Later, he's crying in the room, saying the watch is gone. Lin Fan gives him a juice to calm him down. They chat, and Lin Fan mentions hearing the voice in his head again. Zhang asks what it wants when suddenly everything pauses. The system announces that now the body is fully healed, he will be teleported to another universe, but his existence here will be frozen. To return, he must help the founder of the Celestial Forge deal with some schoolboys. In a pink room, a boy feels an aura. Obviously Lin Fan, confused, looking at himself in the mirror, wondering why he's a girl. For a second, He thought he was a boy. He decides to check when the body's mother appears, telling him to come for breakfast. At that moment, she closed the door, realizing she had come in at the wrong time. Lin Fan now wanted to know why his voice turned him into a woman and put him in those pajamas. At the table, his mother remarked that she was too beautiful and all the boys must be following her. He asked his mother about the milk, and she said it was to make him stronger. He poured all the milk into the soup and drank it immediately, commenting that it indeed tasted delicious. His mother was puzzled by this. At the bus stop, he noticed that life outside the hospital was very serene. Since the body's mother told him not to lose her, he decided to follow the usual routine. He was calmly on the bus when a little girl got on. She couldn't reach the handrail, so he gave up his seat for her, and she thanked him. At that moment, a guy with purple hair boarded. Zhang Hao asked why he wasn't saving the seat. He grabbed Lin Fan's face, demanding a response or threatening to slap him. Lin Fan recalled some memories of the girl being bullied. The guy kept slapping, thinking today Lin Fan seemed different. Suddenly, a man rushed onto the bus, telling the driver to speed up because a lunatic was coming. People were running outside, and the maniac entered, aiming to hit someone. The guy harassing Lin Fan was startled and said his psychopath was entering. Lin Fan calmly stated it was just an ordinary guy. The maniac ran towards the girl and ink splattered. The bully was shocked and trembling. Lin Fan had blocked the attack with his hand and asked why a monk wanted to kill people. The man retorted he wasn't a monk and ordered Lin Fan to let go. Lin Fan repeated for him to let go. The passengers on the bus were confused by this madness. The man began to sweat and released his grip, falling to the floor and asking if Lin Fan was crazy. Lin Fan demanded he answer the question. Later, the police surrounded the bus and everyone was being escorted out. The man was still terrified, telling Lin Fan to stay away. Lin Fan wanted to return the man's tools, but he refused to take them back. Lin Fan said it was fine. Meanwhile, his friend was outside, his soul practically leaving his body. Lin Fan called out to him, saying it was a pleasure to see him again. He extended his hand, suggesting they should get to know each other better. The trembling guy greeted him. He felt something sticky and realized what it was. While the friend stood paralyzed, staring at his own hand, a nurse came to apply some bandages. Lin Fan assured her it was fine, explaining it was a kind of training to strengthen the mind. The nurse quickly noticed he wasn't normal. The guy who had invaded the bus was being taken away by the police. Seeing Lin Fan, he ran off, shouting he was heading to jail. A guard congratulated Lin Fan, saying the police department would contact the school. Lin Fan dismissed it, saying he was late and had to go. The officer admired his spirit, but told him to stay put as they needed to discuss his injuries with the school. Lin Fan said it was nothing, he was just using the pain to strengthen his mind. The officer, now certain something was off with him, stayed silent. Lin Fan found himself in front of Shenyang School, a body he was in. Walking around, he imagined Zhang would be a great teacher, but thought all the students would run away from the needles, making it quite scary. He went to an empty classroom, sat down, and began to doze off. He remembered his mother asking the doctor if he could attend school. The doctor had advised against it, which saddened her, and so Lin Fan had never been in a classroom. At that moment, he was poked with a pencil. The girl with a ribbon said he had crossed the line. She was confident that hurting him would make him cry out in pain. However, he just stared at her, and she found it strange that he didn't react. She wondered if she hadn't poked deep enough and applied more force. Lin Fan asked if it was some kind of joke, as people in the hospital always did this. He turned to relax, and she found it odd, wondering what this talk about a hospital was. She approached to apply more force and ketchup sprayed on her face, got up, and ran away. At that moment, a blue-haired guy told Zhang Hao that the protagonist was bothering his girlfriend. He noticed Zhang Hao was down and asked what the problem was. Zhang Hao said it was nothing serious, just better to leave that Tianyang lunatic alone. The blue-haired guy remarked that the only strange thing about that kid was how effeminate he was. Yeah, in the end, he's just a kid. Lin Fan approached and greeted Zhang Hao, saying it was nice to see they were in the same class. Smiling, the blue-haired guy wondered why this idiot was there. However, Zhang Hao, excited, stood up to greet him. Lin Fan mentioned remembering him from the bus, and Zhang Hao agreed it was quite a coincidence. With that, Lin Fan walked away, leaving Zhang Hao desolate at his desk. A while later, the teacher entered the room and asked if they remembered the poem she assigned yesterday. The students were scared she might ask them to read it because they knew she was ruthless. She immediately called the protagonist and asked him to read. Everyone knew he was timid and were sure he would stumble over the words. However, Lin Fan simply stood up and said he didn't remember it. The teacher called his name, but her sixth sense kicked in, realizing something was strange about him today. Lin Fan asked if he could sit down, and she allowed it. He thanked her, and everyone wondered how he escaped her so easily. In the classroom, students were chatting while Lin Fan stood in a corner with a key in hand. The blue-haired guy put a hand on his shoulder and asked what he did with Zhang Hao and the teacher. Lin Fan didn't respond, seemingly focused on something. The guy grabbed him by the collar, demanding an answer. Lin Fan mentioned that electric current could stimulate the human body and strengthen it, so he planned to test it. The guy doubted his sanity and challenged him to do it. Without hesitation, Lin Fan inserted the key and both were shocked, literally. Another friend, noticing the commotion, asked what was happening and got shocked too. From a distance, someone asked if they were forming a train. Soon, the whole class was being shocked. Lin Fan commented that the amperage was too low, making it ineffective, but seeing everyone on the floor, he wondered why they were all sleeping and warned they might catch a cold. Ignoring them, he decided to go to the bathroom. The teacher at the door was ready to teach trigonometric functions. He opened the door excitedly, but dropped his materials in shock. The entire class was electrocuted. He called emergency services, reporting something strange had happened. Ambulances arrived, and Lin Fan wondered why there were so many, thinking high school was indeed scary. Everyone at school heard that Class 12 was electrocuted except for the kid who used to suffer. Lin Fan was returning when someone called him from behind a tree. He approached, asking if they were calling him, and a Shade girl confirmed. He asked if there was a problem while she trembled, holding a love letter behind her back. Suddenly, someone snatched it from her and asked what it was. A guy named Tang Ji asked if she was going to give it to Chen Yang. She turned, demanding it back, but he raised his arm, teasing her about being cute. While he played with the letter, she insisted he return it. Lin Fan jumped and snatched it from his hand. Tang Ji was confused, and Lin Fan asked why he was doing that. Tang Ji questioned if he had really snatched it and approached Lin Fan, saying if he read what was written, he would leave him alone. Lin Fan asked the girl if she wanted him to know what was in it, and she said no. Lin Fan declared he wouldn't read it if she didn't agree. Tang Ji punched the tree, leaving a hole, and the girl knelt, saying it was better to read it than suffer. Lin Fan said they couldn't hurt him, so he wouldn't read it. Tang Ji demanded he repeat that, and his friend said Lin Fan was asking for a beating. However, Lin Fan gave a reverse punch to the tree, splitting it in half. The guys were trembling, their souls leaving their bodies. Meanwhile, other students ran to the teacher to report that some students were bothering Lin Fan. The teacher, angry, said he would solve this now. However, upon arriving, he was also shocked. Lin Fan was telling Tang Ji that he wasn't acting right and made him repeat that stealing others' belongings was wrong. Tang Ji, terrified, repeated it. Seeing the destroyed tree, Tang Ji obediently listened. Lin Fan slapped the letter on Tang Ji's face, telling him he was too skinny and needed to go home and eat. Embarrassed, Tang Ji agreed and said he was going home. The trio ran off, and the teacher questioned if the story seemed strange. He asked the students if this was normal, and they said no. Lin Fan returned the letter to the girl, but she shyly said she wanted to give it to him. Lin Fan responded that pink letters are usually love confessions, something old Zhang told him. She confirmed and asked if he could be her boyfriend. The teacher, sure Lin Fan would accept, told him to reject it. However, Lin Fan said no. He stated that his life goal was to become the strongest man and she didn't deserve him. The girl ran off crying, saying he didn't deserve her. Lin Fan realized it was impossible to understand girls, just like Zhang said, but he didn't care much and left. The body Lin Fan took over, Chen Yang was a lovable and skinny boy, making everyone think he wasn't manly. But the girl thought he was different, and Chen Yang wanted to confess to her. He prayed every night that if she confessed, he would accept. However, Lin Fan told her she didn't deserve him. At the hospital, the doctors were puzzled about what these students were thinking. The boy woke up and told them not to cut his clothes because they were Armani, very expensive, and then fainted again. The doctor put his hand on his face, remarking that this kid almost died and was thinking about clothes. Later, the students were all in the same room, obviously exhausted, wondering where their parents were. One asked what happened, and he said it started when he touched Lin Fan. They blamed him, but he told everyone to shut up, not imagining that maniac Lin Fan would do something like that. He mourned that it was all Lin Fan's fault, but strangely, he wasn't in the room. The blue-haired guy said Lin Fan should be in the emergency room since he was the closest, asked if he was dead, and everyone fell silent. They began to comment that Chenin wasn't such a bad person. Even though they teased him, he was a kind boy in the end. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. They were sure it was family bringing food, but it was Lin Fan asking if they were his classmates. Everyone was shocked to see him unharmed. He walked in with 2 bags, saying it was hard to find them there. While they wondered how he was intact, he announced he brought milk and sausages for everyone. He approached the blue-haired guy, who told him not to come closer, saying they didn't want his dirty food. Zhang told them not to blame Lin Fan, saying he was just crazy and he wanted the food. The friend kept nagging, asking why Zhang respected Lin Fan so much, until one of the guys in the room said the boss had sent a message. Everyone was shocked to see it, and the blue-haired guy trembled. It was photos of what happened that morning with Tang Ji. He dropped the phone and told Lin Fan it was incredible that he had come to take care of his friends. Meanwhile, on top of the hospital, a guy was looking at the scenery. He remembered someone holding documents in his face. It was his ex-wife, telling him that since he was going to die, he should transfer everything to her. Seeing the guy next to him, he wondered why she didn't wait until he died. Tired of it, he spread his wings. Back in the student's room, Lin Fan was there when the guy fell to the side, shocking everyone. Lin Fan saw it, grabbed him by the arm, and held him. However, the arm bone broke, so he grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him back into the room. He asked the guy why he tried to spread his wings and why he wanted to know why he was saved. Sad, he revealed he had a fatal disease and just wanted to end it all quickly. Lin Fan patted his head, saying the director mentioned that when you're sad, you should cry. The guy started to cry, clutching Lin Fan's legs and sobbing. The doctors entered the room, asking about the guy who attempted to fly. As he was being taken out, the doctor asked if Lin Fan had really saved him. Zhang Hao then called out to Lin Fan, pointing out that his arm was broken. Lin Fan seemed unfazed, and everyone was scared at how intact this lunatic appeared. He told the doctor it was fine, as he was used to it and would heal quickly. The doctors wondered what he meant by used to it. Meanwhile, the gangsters were talking about how cool he was. Now, everyone at school called him the new boss. The blue-haired guy suggested kneeling, and Tang Ji said he was now the little brother of that kid. In the operating room, Lin Fan refused anesthesia, saying the pain would make him stronger. He told the doctors he was as familiar with that place as they were. They concluded he was going mad from the pain. When Lin Fan tried to refuse the injection again, the doctors told him it was already done. He revealed he had no money and started to sleep. The system analyzed and announced that the mission was complete, awarding him 2 rewards for completing an S-rank task. Time, which had been frozen, would now resume normally. He found himself back in the hospital with Zhang asking what he was talking about. Confused, Lin Fan looked to the side and asked Zhang if he was talking about the voice in his head. Zhang agreed, and Lin Fan explained the whole story about turning into a boy in girls' pajamas. Zhang remarked that it was a perverted dream. Meanwhile, in the world he had altered, the mother was crying beside the body until he woke up, feeling pain in his arm, and started to thrash around. The next day, he went to school, terrified because he was already injured and knew it wouldn't be easy. At that moment, the gangs approached him. Everyone stared at him, trembling. Suddenly, they knelt, telling the master he could pass. He looked pale, unable to show any expression, and just agreed, walking past like a boss. Behind the trees, the girl remarked that he truly was a brave man, realizing she didn't deserve him. At the city's special center, people were discussing the increasing intelligence of the creatures. Monk Liu Hai claimed it was impossible for creatures to become so smart. Tao Ming warned that if they continued evolving, humanity would soon be extinct. The head of the table confirmed he wasn't lying. Kim Song asked what would happen at this rate. Another monk, Orelho, slammed the table, saying the problems had already started. Someone then told everyone to shut up, announcing that with this new intelligence, creatures of the same level as adventurers could now defeat them. The leader declared that everyone there would have to fight to the death or save the city. He was the head of the association and the strongest in the city. Back at the hospital, everyone was congratulating the president because it was his birthday. He thanked them, and they told him to make a wish. He clasped his hands, wishing for a calm day. However, at that moment, a boy appeared, saying they had problems with the guys from room 666. The lunatics were causing a revolution, holding up signs saying they wanted something. The staff thought it was eggs or some kind of food and brought them, but the patients said it wasn't what they wanted. They showed the signs again, and no one had any idea what these crazies wanted. The president came and took a look, telling them they wouldn't get it. They stared at him and fell to the ground, thrashing and demanding it. The president frowned and ordered to bring it. The staff, still clueless, asked what it was. Meanwhile, in room 666, Lin Fan was lifting 100 kilograms weights, while Zhang was hanging on a punching bag. Hours later, everything was completely destroyed. Zhang strangely congratulated Lin Fan for enduring his training, indicating Zhang wasn't that weak either. The scene shifted to a tunnel where rats scurried around. Some adventurers were fighting against a giant wolf. Talismans struck its chest. It was Xiang Yang's group from the beginning. She activated the power of a recovery pill and healed the knight in front. He used a sword technique and aimed it at the wolf, hitting it directly. The creature agonized but immediately charged at them. The monk activated the power in his bead necklace, creating a projection to stop the attack. However, the wolf changed its expression and went to swipe with its paw. The talisman-wielding guy screamed as the attack hit Xiang Yang directly. She was thrown against the wall, severely injured. The talisman guy realized it was the wolf's strategy to eliminate the healer first. He warned that the beast wouldn't be easy to defeat and ordered someone to get Xiang Yang out of there. He threw 3 more talismans, but the monster easily defended with its tail. It continued to increase its strength against the monk, who was starting to run out of energy. They realized the creature had pretended to be weak at the beginning. The monk was devoured in front of the group. He launched an attack, and the blue-shirted guy pushed the talisman forward, perforated. He told his friend to flee. Now face to face with the creature, while the rest of the group was already dead, he screamed for Xiang Yang to get up and run. She could only watch the fight in despair. He activated energy in his blade and charged again. Before his attack could hit, she tried to use a recovery pill on him, which strengthened him, but it was the last of her energy. However, his blade was flung away, and he was crushed by the wolf. Under its paw, he activated a spell, causing his body and the creature to explode. The area was engulfed in flames, but the creature seemed to have survived. Despite being injured, it managed to escape the tunnel. Meanwhile, at the mental hospital, Zhang was counting ants on the grass while Lin Fan followed the system's strategies to strengthen himself. He tried to concentrate as Zhang called him. She picked up an ant and told him to look, saying it was crying. Finding it strange, she noticed Li Fang was red and asked if he was sick. The system warned him to be careful as the technique could explode his body. Zhang started acupuncture to save her friend. He was in pain and screamed, sent flying. A poor ant paid the price. The system notified him that he had unlocked absolute vision, and even the system was confused as to why he had received it. Lin Fan told Zhang he was following the instructions of the voice in his head, but it hurt a lot and he was glad it helped. Zhang, excited, asked how he felt after the acupuncture and if he wanted more. Smiling, he said it was the best ever, but now he was hungry. Zhang had an idea, picked up an ant, and told him to eat it, saying it was a bit sour but very tasty. Just as he was about to try it, a nurse called them for lunch and they released the poor ant. In the cafeteria, people commented on how much he was eating. Lin Fan had devoured about 10 trays. A nurse told him to stop or he'd get a stomachache. She tried to take the tray, but he wouldn't let go. Lin Fan looked at the doctor and said he was still hungry. The doctor wondered if he had an eating disorder. He bit a metal spoon and the doctor was sure something was wrong with him. The system congratulated him on receiving the technique but warned that the side effect was extreme hunger. In the tunnel, people were photographing the aftermath. Unfortunately, no one had survived. A man with an eye patch was there, observing everything. He told someone on the phone that it was 4 against 1, but some prodigies had lost. The person responded that if the rumor about creatures getting smarter was true, it was alarming. The eye patch guy confirmed, saying the monster had targeted the healer first to kill the rest more easily. The voice on the phone asked where the monster was now, and he said it had apparently gone through the sewers. The challenge was now predicting where it would appear next. He told the guy with glasses to alert everyone about the danger. The guy with glasses asked what they should tell the families. He instructed them to clean up the bodies and tell the families that the kids were amazing and did a great job, but they were a bit stubborn and reckless. He then advised not to mention that last part. Back with the president, someone arrived to inform him that the kitchen staff had all fainted. The poor president asked for an explanation. 2 hours earlier, people were remarking that Lin Fan seemed strange for being so hungry. As he was being taken away, another lunatic asked when he would return the food in his belly. Lin Fan looked at Zhang, who confirmed something. Knowing his friend needed help, he reached out his hand on the table and started headbutting it. Everyone rushed to stop him before he hurt himself, and in the commotion, Lin Fan escaped, giving a thumbs up to his friend, who returned it, battered but grateful. With the mission complete, Lin Fan headed to the kitchen where the women were working. They were calm until a shadow appeared, saying it was hungry. They were startled and saw Lin Fan, who said he wanted to eat a lot of meat. Everyone knew who the patients from room 666 were and fainted immediately. Back with the president, after receiving this information, he ordered a raise for the poor women and asked why Lin Fan was so hungry. The nurse explained that they were still running tests but didn't know the cause yet. That night, near the hospital's sewer, a paw emerged, sensing no fighters sent nearby. It was the wolf from earlier, needing a quiet place to heal. Moving like a shadow, it concluded that it was best to find a kind human to care for it. Transforming into a puppy, it thought that looking cute would make anyone unable to resist. Once they saw it was injured, they would surely care for it. In room 666, Zhang was complaining that his watch had broken again and needed fixing, but he had no money. Lin Fan said he didn't have any either. Zhang suggested kidnapping someone for ransom, and Lin Fan asked who he would kidnap. Zhang pointed at Lin Fan, saying he could kidnap him and then claim the reward. Lin Fan asked who would pay the ransom, and Zhang said it would be his girlfriend from the TV. Lin Fan corrected him, saying she wasn't his girlfriend, but his wife, and she wouldn't pay anything. Zhang agreed, saying he had heard a saying that one lives longer if they leave all their money with their wife. At that moment, they heard a dog's sound, and Lin Fan said there really was one at the window. The puppy was all cute, but in its mind, it was thinking these stupid humans had taken the bait. Zhang approached, saying it was adorable, and Lin Fan agreed. What they didn't realize was that the dog was stretching from the ground. Zhang decided to let it in to heal it. With the puppy on the bed, Lin Fan said it was lucky because it would receive acupuncture. The puppy got excited, thinking it would heal quickly now. As Zhang prepared, the dog thought that once healed, it would eat both of them. However, it got a needle in its forehead and was paralyzed on the bed. Zhang said that its trembling was a good sign, and since it seemed to be enjoying it, he added more needles. The dog wanted to ask them to stop but was incapacitated within 10 seconds. Zhang was curious why the dog didn't seem to be getting better and asked Lin Fan if he was still hungry. Lin Fan, unfortunately, wasn't full. The system then alerted him that it had found an entity with a lot of energy in front of him. He saw it was the puppy with level 2 energy, and the system even provided a recipe on how to prepare it. Lin Fan found it incredibly cute and concluded that something so cute must be very tasty. The puppy wondered when Cube equated to tasty. Seeing them approach, it was scared as they clearly intended to eat it. Zhang removed the needles, saying there was no point in saving the dog anymore. Lin Fan agreed, saying it was a shame, but the dog would need to be cooked. The puppy realized these two were insane. Zhang patted it and told it to rest in peace. The puppy was getting increasingly angry at being treated this way. Zhang noted it was still alive. Lin Fan said it didn't matter. With that bleeding, it would soon die. They began to pray, saying it was a shame, but it would be a great meal. Zhang complained it was too small, frustrating the puppy further. Tired of holding back, the puppy started transforming back into its true form, a giant wolf. It asked how they dared think of eating it. Zhang smiled, saying that now it was big enough for both of them. The wolf told them to stop underestimating it and went to bite. However, Lin Fan grabbed the wolf by its teeth and threw it onto the bed, scolding it for trying to bite humans. The poor creature trembled, unable to understand how this human had so much strength. It tried to bite Lin Fan's arm but couldn't cause any harm. Realizing it couldn't injure the boy, the wolf was confused as Zhang commented on how soft the wolf's fur was and felt like petting it. After petting it, Zhang said it was time to begin and stuck out his tongue in anticipation. The monster thought it was a cursed level 2 creature, not a pet, and wondered why these two were humiliating it. Lin Fan then stretched out his hand and slapped the wolf, knocking out all its teeth, warning it to stop thinking about harming Mr. Zhang. While Zhang hugged it, the wolf was desolate, trying to gauge if these guys were fighter level 3 or 4, or maybe even higher. As Zhang petted the wolf, Lin Fan wished it would die quickly because he was hungry. Zhang remarked that the tail was fluffy and wanted to see it wag. Lin Fan ordered the wolf to wag its tail, which it initially refused to do, but a squeeze of its teeth made it comply. The wolf's plan was to respect Lin Fan, and when given a chance, devour Zhang. But Zhang insisted on seeing it wag its tail like a tornado, not just side to side. The wolf thought these bastards were violating its rights, but a squeeze of its teeth and a slap on the head made it perform the tail helicopter. Zhang said it was the cutest dog ever, and now they were sure it would be delicious. The best part was that it was big enough to feed both of them. Lin Fan stared eagerly at the meal. Then the lunatic asked how they would cook it since he liked fried meat. Lin Fan wanted to make a soup, but the problem was they didn't have a fire. The wolf felt relieved. But then Lin Fan suggested using electricity. Zhang agreed it was a great idea, saying that in the last training, Lin Fan smelled delicious too. The wolf, lying on the bed, wondered if it was really in the human world. The next scene showed the wolf begging them to stop while being electrocuted. Zhang remarked that electricity was indeed similar to fire in the end. Some other patients observed from a distance, wondering why they weren't invited to the party. A while later, smoke was rising from the wolf, and Zhang commented that it seemed delicious. Lin Fan said it wasn't quite ready yet. The wolf agonized until it lost its life and went to the heavens. Zhang touched the chin and said the meat seemed very good. The psychos were drooling and began to eat. A nurse was walking down the corridor. It was Lu Jiang, one of the new hires. He remembered being told that if something strange happened, he should check room 666. With the power out, he decided to investigate. When he shone his flashlight, he saw Zhang and Lin Fan munching away with the giant head of the wolf behind them. He wondered if he was really holding a head, and Zhang invited him to join them. The poor guy fell to the floor and immediately ran off. The next moment, the president was coming, telling him to stop lying. But the guy insisted it was true. There was a giant-headed dog staring at him. The president turned on the generator and the lights came back on. Entering the room, the lunatics greeted him good night. The president asked what they were doing and what that was. They both said it was a dog rug, having clearly used every part of the creature. Holding it, the doctor recognized it as the fur of a level 2 creature and had no idea how it ended up there. He asked them what happened, and they said they were just sleeping and didn't know. The president questioned if they hadn't left the bed, and they confirmed they were lying down the whole time. However, someone in the background confirmed they were holding a head. The director then asked what Lin Fan was hiding under the sheet. Lin Fan removed the sheet, saying he wasn't hiding anything, but the director pointed out something glowing. Lin Fan looked down, wondering what it was. The director told Lin Fan to hand it over, and he complied. Staring at the lamp, the director considered asking about the rug, but at that moment, the two said they were going to sleep. The poor president, already exhausted, felt like he was aging a year every month working there. He wished them good night and left the room. As soon as he was gone, Zhang asked Lin Fan if he was full. Lin Fan confirmed but had a question. He wondered why the president always found everything he hid but never found Zhang's needles. Zhang revealed that he hid them in his silky hair. Lin Fan found that interesting and decided to grow his hair out to have a hiding place. Consuming the meat would keep him from feeling extra hungry for 3 days. Meanwhile, in a city building, the eye patch guy was exhausted because the families of the group wouldn't stop pestering him. He swore to end the beast that killed them and crush his bones. His assistant mentioned that an old man wanted to talk. The hospital president informed him that he wouldn't believe it, but 2 of his patients had killed the beast he was looking for. Naturally, the eye patch guy was skeptical, but the person hung up. Angry, he punched the wall and jumped out, wondering why he was heading to the mental hospital at midnight. Meanwhile, the new nurse went downstairs to see if he could find the remains of the creature they had eaten. He found a piece of the skull while they were still throwing bones from above. He knew something was wrong, but the skull vanished, leaving him more confused. The poor guy fainted again. Outside, the president was examining the sewer from which the monster had come when the skull approached, spinning. It nearly hit him, but the eye patch guy stopped it, recognizing it and asking how it died. The director reiterated that he already explained. The eye patch guy threw it on the ground, declaring it impossible for a common person to kill such a creature, especially a lunatic. The director insisted that, although crazy, Lin Fan was not ordinary and handed him a notebook containing records of the patients from room 666. Flipping through the pages, the eye patch guy was incredulous, noting how Lin Fan attempted to end himself daily but only grew stronger. The director confirmed this. He then asked if these two killed the beast, and the director affirmed. He wanted to know how they did, but the doctor admitted he had no idea, as the boys had already eaten it. Shocked, the eye patch guy asked for clarification, and the director explained that they ate the beast. Horrified, the eye patch guy surmised the boys had some special talent and wanted to see them. The next day, Lin Fan and Zhang were on the lawn having a staring contest. It had been going on for a while, and Zhang begged Lin Fan to blink, saying he couldn't take it anymore. Lin Fan looked to the side, saying he blinked. Zhang celebrated, claiming victory. The eye patch guy observed from a distance, noting how Lin Fan stared directly at the sun without reacting and wondered if the boy had a unique talent. Turning to the director, he asked if he could take care of Lin Fan given his talent. The director rushed over, confirming if he was serious. The eye patch guy understood if the director was reluctant, but the director eagerly agreed, even offering the white-haired boy. The only condition was that the eye patch guy couldn't return the boys and had to sign a waiver absolving the hospital of any responsibility for their actions. The eye patch guy assured him that his people wouldn't get hurt provided they didn't face beasts alone. The director smiled, finding the arrangement perfect. The eye patch guy explained that the city was at a critical point, and if these boys became good fighters, they would be well treated. The director, fearing they might wreak havoc on the city, warned him. The eye patch guy acknowledged the increasing strength and intelligence of the creatures, assuring the director he would stay and protect the place. With a hand in his pocket, he agreed, expressing his own concerns about humanity's future. "It doesn't matter what creature comes, I will kill it," the Cyclops said with determination. However, he knew that the power of a single person was limited, so the current focus was to train as many fighters as possible. As the boys chatted, he approached and asked if they had eaten the beast last night. They didn't respond, so he repeated the question. The boys exchanged glances and then turned, denying it, saying they hadn't killed or eaten anything. The Cyclops focused power into his palm and approached Lin Fan's face. Lin Fan just watched, wondering what the golden light was. The Cyclops concluded that due to Lin Fan's lack of reaction, he had a maximum potential of rank 3. Zhang then whispered to Lin Fan that the guy wanted to train him. They both acted all cute, saying it was very kind of him. The Cyclops was confused by their behavior. Lin Fan, however, expressed doubt in the Cyclops' training methods, suggesting that with only one eye, he wouldn't be able to see him practice properly. Zhang suggested that Lin Fan should try their training methods, which might even heal the Cyclops' eye. The Cyclops realized these were the methods described in their records. Zhang assured him that Lin Fan was very strong and that if he let them heal his eye, they could train together. Lin Fan added that Zhang was excellent with acupuncture and could easily cure his eye. While the Cyclops considered this, Zhang buzzed around him, asking if he wanted to try. No national-level doctor had been able to heal his eye, so he doubted these boys could. Ultimately, he sat down, deciding to let them try. He was confident that his strength was such that nothing could harm him. Zhang began, and soon there were 20 needles in his head. Zhang announced he was about to use the Galaxy technique, halfway to the Milky Way. He placed a needle on the Cyclops' forehead, who asked why the names were so funny. Zhang explained that he had researched for years to perfect and maim this technique, and everyone who experienced it loved it, which Lin Fan confirmed. The Cyclops remarked that it gave an interesting numbness. Since he didn't expect Zhang to achieve anything, he hadn't activated his protective barrier. He didn't anticipate it would have any effect. Then Zhang applied another needle, announcing it was time for the 13th one. The Cyclops felt something reach his brain and began losing consciousness, but Lin Fan saved him. Zhang asked if he had fainted, and Lin Fan confirmed. Zhang wondered if there was something wrong with his ability, but said he had an idea for making it much better. He asked Lin Fan if he wanted to try, and Lin Fan agreed, trusting him. Soon, both of them were on the ground, confused. Zhang had another idea for improvement, but had no one to test it on, leading to all three collapsing. The director approached, wondering where Zhang hid so many needles, since not even a national-level fighter could survive them. In the emergency room, a special phone rang, indicating it was from that room. Everyone recognized the sound and began crying in despair. Answering it, the person on the other line said they were sending help, noting that this time 3 people were injured. The medics arrived quickly, taking the 3 boys away. The driver, with bandaged eyes, was considered risky by the staff, but he reassured them it was due to Zhang's incredible skill. He shut the doors and sped off in the ambulance. Everyone was concerned about the boys' arrival. At the hospital, Lai Fu wondered why those guys were so resilient. Maybe he should stage an unexpected event to deal with both of them. He slapped himself, questioning his thoughts, but remembered how troublesome they were and slapped himself again. He called the director, pleading not to send the boys again. But 2 days later, they were back. The director reminded him that keeping them hospitalized was better than having them return. Lai Fu complained about constantly needing to find new doctors because of them. The director told him to relax and check the message. Lai Fu found a lot of money with a note warning him not to send the boys back now that he had accepted the bribe. On the stretcher, the system asked if the protagonist wanted to accept an S as defense, but as always, he didn't respond. Because of this, the system chooses for him. In another part of the hospital, the guy who fainted upon seeing the giant dog's head is talking with his wife. She says she's gaining weight, but he reassures her that she looks wonderful, whether slim or chubby. She feels happy and romantic, peeling an apple for him. She hands him the apple, and he is delighted. At that moment, a doctor enters and informs him that he will be discharged in the afternoon, provided he doesn't have another panic attack. A nurse announces that the patients are ready, and he orders them to be brought in. The first to enter is Lin Fan on a stretcher. The man immediately points at him, shouting that it's all his fault, the guy who was eating the meat with the giant dog's head. This shock causes him to faint again. The system continues evolving the protagonist's body, and he wakes up beside Zhang. Meanwhile, on the bed next to him, the man clutches the doctor's leg, begging him to leave the room. Seeing the boy, he says he's hungry and wants to eat something. Their eyes meet, and he faints on the floor again. The Cyclops wakes up, wondering how he ended up like this. His body can withstand bullets, so it shouldn't be affected by mere needles. He's the strongest person in this city, so how was he knocked out by a Limitic? John comes up to him, asking if he's awake and apologizing for not getting it right the first time, but assures that with a few more tries, he'll succeed. The Cyclops agrees to try again, and Zhang excitedly tells Lin Fan that this guy is very kind. Zhang goes through his hair, saying that this time the eye will be cured. The Cyclops is taken to the emergency room because his heart rate dropped. Lin Fan tells him it's okay, he'll get it next time. Upon waking up, the Cyclops wonders if he fainted again because of those needles. It seems impossible since a level 9 beast once broke his bone and didn't pass out. Zhang appears again, apologizing but promising that this time it will work. The Cyclops wants to be sure that it's the needles causing this. Zhang reassures him that it will work this time. The next moment, the Cyclops is being wheeled away because his heart rate is dropping again. Feeling desolate, Lin Fan says that the guy is strong and will survive. Zhang relaxes while the nurse searches for those cursed needles. In the next scene, the Cyclops wakes up with his legs in casts. The doctor informs him that his left leg is completely paralyzed. Zhang approaches, asking how he feels. The Cyclops can't believe he's nearly dying because of this psycho. Zhang looks at Lin Fan, saying the guy doesn't seem to trust him anymore. Lin Fan replies that it seems they are different then. The Cyclops looks angrily to the side, saying these two should like this video to help them. Do you remember that last chapter ended with Cyclops being tortured in the hospital? Or maybe he was just receiving acupuncture treatment. The two guys were chatting beside him, while Cyclops was just thinking that these damn people needed to leave. The crazies were drinking Coke and Sprite, complaining that it wasn't Coke or Sprite. Zhang said he wanted to go out and buy some, but Lin said they had no money. Both of them looked at Cyclops and had the same idea. They approached him and said he had to pay for the great acupuncture treatment. Cyclops just told them to get lost. Then Zhang said fine, he'd sell the watch Cyclops loved so much. Cyclops glared at him and said he didn't need that amazing watch and would give them money if they explained how they killed the cursed dog. They looked at each other, and Zhang said it was a cute dog that even wagged its tail. Lin agreed, saying that when he went to fry the dog, it didn't even react. Cyclops asked if they had been so cruel to the dog that it preferred to die. Lin said yes, it was a very good dog, and Zhang mentioned that the meat was good. Even the poor dog's soul was writhing. Cyclops continued, saying he wouldn't believe such nonsense until he collapsed on the pillow, lamenting that it was his fault for trusting information from two psychopaths. Zhang asked who these psychopaths were, and Lin said maybe it was Cyclops himself. With that, both of them extended their hands, saying that now they had given the information, they wanted the money. Cyclops reached into his pocket, threw a card with a password, and said there was 50,000 on it. They stared at him, and Cyclops said it was the account with the least money, but it was enough. He didn't care how much they would spend because he had no family, and his only goal in life was to kill the beasts. However, they returned the card, saying that wasn't money. Cyclops told them to go to the bank and withdraw the cash. But they stared at each other, threw the card back, and left, saying this guy was poor and trying to fool them. The poor guy was left there seething with rage, thinking these two were out of their minds. Outside the hospital was a level 2 mystical snake. It sensed that the energy of the people who killed the dog was coming from that direction. But besides the two, it could sense the presence of a high-level fighter. It decided to change direction before more people saw it. However, that's when it noticed something. On a tree next to it, a girl was telling a guy to pay first. The snake just watched, its heart pounding in its head. After a loud hesitation, the guy left. The girl was counting money with the snake right beside her. It figured it could kill her without being noticed by the fighter. It went to bite her, saying the smell was incredible. But it sensed the dog's energy right then and shrank in size. Meanwhile, the woman thought she had earned a lot today. From a distance, Zhang and Lin Fan were approaching. They were wondering where they could buy Coke and Sprite. The girl called them over for a game. They approached, and Lin said he wanted Coke, Sprite, and something to eat. She saw they were holding hands and thought it was a waste of time, it seemed. They looked at each other, confused, and repeated that they wanted Coke and Sprite. That's when the woman noticed they were wearing hospital patient uniforms, and seeing the detail on the shirt, knew they were psychiatric patients. She remembered a day when she was running and looking for her sister. A guy had thrown one of the hospital patients to the ground. He took a doll and asked how she considered it a daughter. He tore it in half while the girl cried, begging him not to do it. She trembled, saying her son had died while the guy laughed. The blonde girl was there just calling for her sister. So with tears in her eyes, she asked the boys where their family was. Zhang said Lin was his family, and Lin said his family was Zhang and the president. The blonde girl understood they had both been abandoned by their families. With that, she took money from the airbag and told them to go buy something. They shook their heads, saying they didn't want money, just to find food. She told them not to worry because she could make money more easily than they thought. Just then, the snake approached from behind Lin Fan, thinking it would now absorb the dog's energy. However, it was grabbed midway and felt confused. The woman was scared, but Lin stretched it out, saying it was a very cute snake, and Zhang agreed. Strangely, the snake felt shy, wondering if they really found it cute. It remembered someone once told it that as long as it stayed small, people would like its identity. It saw a young boy and thought he would find it cute. But as soon as the boy noticed its existence, he was startled, and everyone started throwing stones at it. After that, the children in the park all ran away. The snake was furious, wondering why no one could see how cute it was. Since that day, it hated humans. But now it was in love with the fact that these two really thought it was adorable. It started to caress Lin's arm, saying they were the chosen ones. While the little snake was all affectionate, the system told Lin that if he ate it, he wouldn't be hungry for 3 days. Moreover, as always, it provided the best way to cook it. The little snake was so happy to finally find someone who thought it was cute. Lin then asked the blonde woman if she could help him with something. Meanwhile, in a house, a boy said the smell was great. The blonde woman was in front of a pot, and the two boys eating were saying it was delicious. The little snake had already ended up in the pot with only its head left in the bowl. A bit earlier, when they arrived at the house and it was on the chopping board, it couldn't escape. Lin stretched out the mashie and struck it squarely, but the blade broke in half. The snake felt relieved that at least they couldn't kill it. Being a cursed serpent had its advantages. Then he extended his hand, and the snake thought trying that was ridiculous, until it was torn in half. With that, the blonde woman announced that the soup was ready, and they said the smell was incredible. She said they didn't need to praise it so much and that her daughter liked her cooking. The two boys got excited, saying it would be great to eat together. However, the woman replied that it was okay, and she had already eaten. So the two boys started eating, saying it was delicious, while she was happy to be part of that moment. A while later, Lin said goodbye, and they thanked her for everything she had done. She said it was nothing special and told them to return to the hospital. They agreed, and Lin said her daughter was lucky to have a mother like her. The woman got emotional and said maybe her daughter was very happy indeed. With that, they left, happily jumping down the streets. They passed by a group, and one of them felt something. He wondered why it seemed like an incredible fighter had stared at him, but seeing it was just a hospital patient, he figured he was going crazy. Then the other members mentioned that the beast's energy had disappeared. Apparently, they informed Cyclops, who asked how that was possible. He received the news that it had already been confirmed, but they didn't find the body or who did it. Just then, Lin Fan entered the room while the guy was talking about trying to locate the snake soon. Lin came in with some food, saying he had something for him. The guy was more focused on the call until Lin opened the container. The guy was sure of it. He cursed and people wondered why the boss was so angry. He ran one of the snake's remains through a device that showed it was indeed a mystical serpent. While the two boys were happily eating, he was there, devastated in the corner. Zhang said that Cyclops didn't seem to want to eat, so they should take it from him, and our boy agreed. Hesitant, Cyclops asked how they killed it and how they were eating it. He knew that it was a creature with the speed of light, so what was it doing in that bowl? Zhang said the snake approached them, and Lin said it was so cute that it wrapped around his arm. Drooling, they said that in the end, it was very adorable. In the sky, the snake and the dog were humiliated beyond belief. Cyclops was almost exploding with rage and said if he believed them again, he'd throw himself out of that window. Zhang said the guy was very aggressive, and Lin replied that crazy people were like that. It was what the president said. The poor guy was there, completely drained. Night fell. He was there thinking that no matter how crazy they were, they had killed two cursed creatures. He couldn't understand if these guys were always hiding their powers. Then he heard a sound beside him and wondered what they were doing. The two boys got up, and Cyclops wondered what they were planning to do. Standing, Zhang said the guy was a good person, and he had improved his technique to be able to heal him. Lin said that if that's the case, he believed in the boy. Cyclops decided that this guy must have some power, so he gave him one more chance. When the needle was near his forehead, Zhang mentioned he couldn't see well because it was too dark. Lin said it wasn't a problem since he'd been practicing for years. With that, he drove the needle in. With his head full of needles, Cyclops felt that this time it was much stronger than before. He was gripping the blanket while Zhang said he couldn't miss the last one. He struck the 13th needle just as someone opened the door, asking what was happening. It was one of the nurses, trembling. Cyclops wondered if he was dying and thought he didn't want to do this. However, he reached out for help and then lost consciousness. The nurse screamed that the two crazies were killing another patient. With that, poor Cyclops was taken away on a stretcher. Sometime later, Zhang apologized, saying he placed the last needle in the wrong spot. Lin said it was okay. There was always hope. However, now the two were tied to the bed. Of course, there's only hope if the guy survives. The doctors had to shave Cyclops' head. They were discussing among themselves when suddenly Cyclops opened his eyes and stared at them. The doctor was startled and everyone looked at each other. The doctor said at least he woke up before the operation, It would have been terrible if he woke up with his head open. Seeing that his vitals improved, they decided to cancel the surgery. They asked Cyclops if he wanted to go back to that room or have a private one. But now he was just staring at these doctors, who started to think he was going crazy too. What the doctors found strange was that his bones seemed to have healed very quickly. However, the problem was that his leg was still broken. Just then, the guy disappeared from the stretcher. He was walking around the hospital with a shiny bald head. He approached Zhang, saying he was the leader of the squad that had been defeated 3 times. Zhang might feel proud, but he wouldn't forget this crazy guy's face. Then he realized that every time he saw his bald head, he'd remember these damn guys. Lin woke up and said Cyclops was very strong to be alive, but assured him that next time Zhang would succeed. The guy looked back, desolate. He approached the window and said goodbye, hoping never to see either of them again, and jumped out. The nurse was startled and said the patient couldn't handle the pressure of the room. However, he landed on his feet below and called the director, saying that although the boys were strong, their behavior was unacceptable. Hearing this, the poor director dropped his phone, wondering why Cyclops gave him hope if he was going to abandon him in the end. He could only relax for a few days. Then Lai Fu called to tell the director that one of the patients had jumped out the window. The director asked if there was any good news like a death. Lai Fu said unfortunately not. The guy seemed fine and escaped. With that, the director said he understood. After all, he was prepared for this. Lai Fu yelled, saying he wasn't the one who had to do surgeries because of those crazies. And the reason he called was because Cyclops hadn't paid any hospital bills. The director hung up and Lai Fu destroyed the phone in rage. Sometime later, in an ambulance, the 2 boys were being transported. Zhang asked if Lin had managed to cure his eye. Lin said unfortunately not, but next time it would work. Poor Zhang was crying, saying he didn't even get to say goodbye to his friend. Lin told him not to worry, he did say goodbye, remembering the moment he went to the window and said goodbye. But Zhang didn't understand that he had said he never wanted to see them again. With that, Zhang relaxed and said if that was the case, maybe he'd do one more acupuncture session. Then he saw some apples and asked Lin for one. Lin tore the leather restraints and got an apple for Zhang. With that, Zhang ate happily. In the passenger seat, the guy said Lai Fu was very dedicated to driving for his patients. Lai Fu said it was just to ensure he'd get what the director owed him. With that, he sped up the ambulance. At the same time, at the Yanhai City port, a tentacle hit a guy, slamming him into a wall. It was a level 4 mystical octopus. That group from before was fleeing the creature. They were activating their powers to try and counterattack, but they found themselves surrounded among the containers. The octopus began releasing black smoke. The group knew that if they were captured by it, they had no chance of survival. With that, they ran desperately. The problem was that one of them was about to be caught and knew he would die if that happened. Just as the tentacle was about to hit, he was protected by a golden barrier. From atop one of the scaffolds, a man said he wasn't in a very good mood. The people recognized him as the boss who told everyone to survive because he would take down the octopus to calm himself a bit. The group was curious to know why he had a shiny bald head. Ignoring them, he used a Buddha attack on the creature, hitting it with a laser that exploded the octopus. Meanwhile, on the bridge, there was a traffic jam. Lai Fu had no idea why this was happening until a bunch of people ran by in a panic. He turned to the side and the guy looked scared. Suddenly, a body slammed against the glass and Lai Fu realized something serious was happening. Meanwhile, Cyclops had defeated that creature, but still felt a malignant energy. One of his employees came running, saying he needed to see this. Showing a map, he said that in that area, one of the beasts had escaped and was blocking the bridge. Everyone there was fleeing in desperation. Lin commented that the apple didn't fill his hunger. Zhang said unfortunately, they had already eaten both. Lin explained that the crazy voice in his head said he needed a lot of energy to advance to the next stage. The system was cursing the boy, saying he wasn't crazy. Outside, Lai Fu got out to rescue the guy who hit the window, but the octopus was right there, destroying everything. He laid the guy on the ground and ordered his assistant to fetch the kit from the ambulance. The assistant said it was impossible with the beast there getting closer. Lai Fu threw his expensive watch and ordered him to bring the kit and take care of it. The assistant continued insisting they should give up because the boy on the ground was going to die. But Lai Fu said he received that watch from a child he treated, and since that day, he swore he would never abandon a patient. The assistant argued that there were 2 other patients in the ambulance. Was he going to let them die? Lai Fu said those 2 bastards didn't count. With that, the assistant opened the door and informed Zhang and Lin that a beast was coming. They looked at each other and freed themselves. The assistant was impressed that they didn't seem restrained. The bridge was a total wreck. While the 2 boys were relaxing and the assistant tried to pull them away. Radiant, they asked if this giant beast was cute. The assistant said maybe, but he was all confused, trying to imagine the giant octopus being cute. Lin said that if that was the case, there was no need to run. Zhang said to let them play with the creature. The assistant trembled and asked if they were crazy. The beast was there, looking for its father, saying it was full. Lin thought that its father wasn't coming, but he was. Lai Fu was asking the driver for help, but he had disappeared. The guy on the ground was almost giving up on life. The octopus approached the 2 boys. The assistant said it was too late and better to give up. Just then, the tentacle was about to hit Lai Fu. The assistant told him to run, but Lai Fu stood firm. The octopus asked if they had seen its father around. Lai Fu already knew that was the end for the boy. At that moment, he was about to be entangled by the tentacle, saying if he didn't answer, he'd die. The assistant on the ground told him to move, and just then, the tentacle rose to kill. When it was about to strike, it was pulled by Lin. The poor octopus was confused, and Lin jumped off the bridge. Lai Fu had closed his eyes, certain he was dead. Slowly, he looked around, saw that the creature was no longer there, and the driver said they had to take the guy to the hospital. Lai Fu was emotional that his friend hadn't fled. The driver told him to shut up, and Lai Fu was confused about how someone could talk like that to the vice president. But the driver said he was the vice president, so it didn't matter. Meanwhile, the octopus was under the bridge, wondering who he was and where he was. From above, Zhang said it was very cute and would be fun to play with. Lin said he'd hold it in place and Zhang should just jump on it. Zhang smiled and jumped, saying to catch him in the air. The octopus was startled and Lin threw it to the side for Zhang to land on it. The crazy guy started poking it, saying it was very cute. Just as the octopus was about to attack him, asking if he was so eager to die, Zhang stood still, almost getting hit if it weren't for Lin pulling him away. Zhang rolled off the creature and hit his head on the ground. Lin mentioned that the creature was a bit aggressive and suggested they hold back a bit. The only problem was that, by accident, he had ripped off a tentacle. Zhang said it didn't matter since the creature had many of them. The monster was on the ground, writhing in pain and calling for its father. Seeing all the tentacles, Lin agreed that Zhang was right. The creature, angry, said they deserved death and went for another strike at Zhang, but Lin grabbed its tentacle midway and pulled, tearing off another one. Nearby, Zhang had found an abandoned grill. As more tentacles were being ripped off, the octopus was pounding Lin, but he didn't react. Almost getting hit in the face, Lin bit the tentacle instead. He immobilized another one until he smelled something strange. He let go of the creature and even the octopus asked where that delicious smell was coming from. A tentacle was being grilled and Zhang was even adding some sauce. Excited, Zhang said it was perfect. The three approached and the octopus, drooling, didn't realize what was happening until it hit him. Trembling, he saw Zhang cutting his tentacles into pieces. Zhang asked if the smell was good and Lin said it was, biting into a piece and saying it was delicious. After a while, Lin mentioned it was the last one. Unfortunately, the monster had many tentacles, but they ate them all. Lin said he still wasn't full. The octopus lay there, battered and crying, wondering where its father had gone. Zhang, seeing the octopus's head, had an idea. Lin said it was adorable and the plan was made. Soon, the creature was all cut on the grill. Only the consciousness of the octopus thought that its father would never see it again. They kept applying honey and grilling it. They even grilled the creature's eye and Lin said it looked very good. As the last piece cooked, they said they'd see its father in the next life. On the bridge above, the police and Cyclops were asking where the beast was. The guy with the map said he felt its energy. He approached to look and they pinpointed it under the bridge. When they arrived, they found the two boys sleeping. So look at the map and then at the boys, telling the chief that the energy had disappeared. When Cyclops saw it, he was shocked. He remembered saying he didn't want to see those damn kids again. The assistant wondered where the beast's energy went. Cyclops started sweating, not wanting to believe it was happening again. A girl approached, saying they should wake the boys and ask some questions, but Cyclops asked if she believed mental patients. She turned and said no. With that, Cyclops scolded her, asking how she could even think for a second about believing a lunatic. He explained it was extremely dangerous, and she might end up bald. The girl had no idea what being bald had to do with believing a lunatic, but any decision by the captain was incredible to her. The assistant then asked what they would do if they couldn't find the creature. Cyclops turned and walked away, approached the boys, and asked if the octopus was tasty. They said yes, it was delicious. With that, he was sure of what happened. Sometime later in a building, someone was saying that some fighters were encountering beasts that knew how to hide their powers. In the meeting, a woman mentioned that the creatures were almost as intelligent as humans. Cyclops was questioning whether he should train the boys when he remembered their malicious faces and trembled. He was desolate while people talked about the end of the meeting. However, everyone had noticed that Cyclops was acting strange today. The orange-haired woman called his name and asked if he was doubting her analysis. She was the head of the strategy department. Cyclops seemed to be waking up now and was all confused. She mentioned that the academy interns would be sent to the mental hospital to train their psychological resilience. She touched the Cyclops' bald head and asked if he had any questions. The other guys at the table thought it would be an easy mission for the interns, so Cyclops shouldn't say anything. After all, it was very difficult to change that woman's mind. Cyclops warned that it would be too difficult a mission for the interns. The other trainers wondered how he could say something so idiotic with a serious face. The woman said she thought he would say it was very easy, while the other bald guy wondered why she never touched his bald head. She explained that it was easy to measure people's strength, but on the battlefield, unexpected things could appear. So if they learn to deal with crazy people, it will strengthen their mental capacity, the strategist explained. She turned, smiling, saying that Cyclops didn't understand things, but he was just imagining how scary those two guys were. The other instructors were excited, saying it was the perfect opportunity. The strategist elaborated that high-level creatures were managing to coordinate the actions of lower-level ones. This caught everyone's attention, and she said it didn't usually happen, indicating a great danger ahead. They needed more information. 3 days later at the hospital, a colony of ants had finally gathered after days of wandering. Someone came with a large hand, grabbed one of the ants, and took it away from its mate, placing it far away. It hurried back to its mate, only to be grabbed again, leaving the other ant calling it evil. Lin was nearby, calling for Zhang, who, upon waking, said Lin took too long to wake up. Zhang explained that he found a genius ant that always managed to find its way home. Leaning against a tree, Lin asked if he really slept for 3 days. Zhang confirmed, saying he slept like a pig. Lin explained that he slept because the voice in his head said he would reach the next level and that he was going to test something. The ants were finally about to re-enter their home when Lin gave a light touch to the tree, splitting it in half and sending it across the field. Zhang celebrated, saying Lin was indeed much stronger now. The tree was about to crush the poor ant, which wondered why these crazies were always there. Excited, Zhang asked if Lin had gotten stronger because of the galaxy's circulation technique. Lin smiled, saying it was definitely because of that, even as the system grew angry. The ant was there, crying because her mate had died. The group approached, telling her not to worry as she still had everyone else there. Meanwhile, others were looking at the tree, wondering who had done that. Nearby, the duo was staring at a generator. Zhang warned that it seemed very dangerous and that he might not be able to save it. But Lin explained that the voice in his head said it was okay. Zhang reminded him that the voice was crazy, and as the president said, you can't trust crazies. The system wanted to end both of them, but Lin assured that he trusted Zhang to save the boy. Now excited, Zhang said if that was the case, he also trusted Lin. The only problem was how to get up there. Lin said it was easy, jumped and landed on top. He gave a thumbs up, and Zhang said that jump was incredible. A bottle fell to the ground, and one of the doctors arrived, ready to call the president. Lin began to transcend with the energy, telling Zhang he thought he made it. Like a Dragon Ball Z character, he felt the incredible sensation of power, but the next second, he was assured, saying the power was flowing. The guy who called the president said they had a problem. The resident asked if they needed an ambulance for room 666. As the nurses passed, the guy said it might be easier to call the undertakers this time. Lin's skin had turned to charcoal. He was startled, and an explosion occurred. His body was thrown to the ground, and he was smoldering. The staff barred everyone because his body still seemed electrified. Lin lay on the ground, unresponsive, until Zhang pushed through everyone and threw himself down, saying he would save his friend. Lin told him not to worry, he was fine, just a little tired, then fainted. But when Zhang touched him, he received all the leftover energy and was thrown to the ground as well. The doctor told the president to come quickly to check on them, asking whether to call an ambulance or bury the boys. Sometime later in the operating room, the doctor wondered how he would save someone so badly burned. He was crying, saying he was a doctor, not a god. The nurse told him to calm down. Outside, she informed Lai Fu that the operation couldn't be done. Lai Fu said that as long as there was a sign of life, one must do their best. He entered, saying if that was the case, he would perform the operation, and the nurse was enamored. 10 hours later, the light was green. The surgery was over, and now they just had to bandage him up and send him to the room. One of them informed that the president was waiting outside, calmly waiting for Lin to come out of surgery. While Lai Fu was fuming with rage, he had brought the two back 3 days ago due to another electrical incident. He burst through the door, yelling at the director, saying he wouldn't accept any excuses and that the extra fee must be paid with the amount already owed. The director calmly smiled, saying he was there to get a membership card for the hospital. Lai Fu got even angrier, saw a fire extinguisher, and grabbed it, ready to attack. The staff held him back, saying it would be a crime, and led him away, noting he was tired from the 10-hour operation. This calmed him down, and the president explained he just wanted to save a bit of money with a card. The next morning, Zhang was sleeping beside Lin. The system congratulated Lin on strengthening his body and reaching the intermediate level. At that moment, Lin opened his eyes, still charred. He got up, and the system advised him to keep his mind calm. However, Lin pulled at his face, tearing off the bandages along with the burnt skin, and the system informed him he now had perfect skin condition. He then slapped Zhang awake, who got excited upon seeing him. Lin was glowing, and a nurse dropped a tray in shock. Some time later, the doctors gathered, marveling at his beautiful smooth skin, while the nurses celebrated. One nurse expressed his admiration, and everyone looked at him, making him embarrassed. Stiklops heard about the incident and concluded he couldn't train those two. But since he spent time with them, he decided he'd attend their funeral. Then he received another call, learning they had survived. He was sure even a level 3 person would die in such an explosion and started wondering if those boys were at least level 4 or higher. If that were the case, such talent needed to be cultivated. The director, now excited with hope, relayed the news. Other doctors rushed, asking if he wanted a membership card, but he declined, saying he didn't want to come there too often. Everyone found his change in mood strange, but now he was glowing, saying Lai Fu deserved a rest after working so hard. Meanwhile, in another room, a man was being cared for by his wife. He noticed her old purse and insisted she get a new one, handing her a card with a good amount of money for her to buy whatever she wanted. She took it, thanking him and saying her uncle would visit soon. The man was excited, wanting to thank the uncle for introducing him to such an incredible girl. She blushed, while someone with many eyes observed people in the hospital. It was the uncle she mentioned. He wondered if he was hallucinating and blamed the fish he ate. Earlier, a parasitic beast had been on a piece of meat and someone grabbed and ate the fish along with the parasite. It was a chubby guy who said it was delicious. Now, walking through the corridors, he wondered where that idiot boy was, raising his child without knowing it. If not for that, he wouldn't waste energy coming here. Suddenly, two things sprouted from his back and wings appeared as he broke into a cold sweat. A nurse at the end of the corridor saw the transformation and was startled. He had turned into a giant fly and told her to shut up and not be so noisy. The next second, he struck her face, knocking her to the ground. Inside the room, Zhang and Lin were relaxing. They looked over as the mosquito man grabbed her by the neck. She pleaded for help, but everyone in the hospital was fleeing. The fly said he'd slit her throat to stop her screaming. She could only see everyone retreating as she begged for help. Then he felt a prick in his arm and let go immediately. Zhang remarked that he seemed extremely ill and was about to explode, but he was kind enough to use acupuncture to save him. The mosquito asked if he wanted to die and threw the woman against the wall, searching for Zhang. He saw Zhang below and went to grab him, but Lin caught his arm and warned him not to hurt Mr. Zhang. Zhang said he could heal the guy, but wasn't sure if he wanted the treatment. Lin said it was fine and asked the guy if he wanted Zhang's acupuncture. The mosquito man was about to respond when Lin slightly broke his arm, asking again if he wanted Zhang's treatment. Seeing his broken arm, the mosquito man threatened to kill him and began flapping his wings to escape. Lin calmly watched, and when the mosquito tried to attack, Lin easily grabbed his wing mid-air and tore it off his back. The mosquito man, now helpless on the ground, was asked again by Lin if he wanted to be healed by Zhang. Grabbing him by the collar, Lin said it might be his only solution. Lin brought him over and told Zhang that he had agreed to the treatment, but Zhang noticed he was choking the guy and asked if that was okay. Lin explained that the mosquito had grabbed the woman that way, so it seemed to be his preference. Zhang agreed, saying it made sense, and began the treatment by sticking the first needle in the mosquito man's head. The mosquito man agonized and fell to the ground, now full of needles and unable to react. Zhang mentioned he would now proceed with the galaxy transformation. The final needle was about to be inserted, and the mosquito man's nervous system warned him of impending doom. He pleaded with Zhang to wait, explaining that he was a parasite, and if Zhang continued, the human host would die too. The mosquito man hoped to exploit Zhang's sense of morality to save himself, intending to lay eggs in everyone and resurrect later. However, Zhang, unaffected by the plea, drove the 13th needle into the mosquito man's forehead. The mosquito man, realizing Zhang didn't hesitate for a second, lamented that he didn't even have time to finish his thought before his body disintegrated. At the same moment, the man's wife changed expression. Her boyfriend asked if she was okay, but an eye appeared on the other side of her head, startling him as she declared that Daddy was dead. When her card fell out of her pocket, he grabbed it, ran out of the room, and slammed the door shut. She broke the door, demanding to be let out. A nurse appeared, asking if this was a new couple's game, but the man, screaming, said he forgave her for having another man's child, for cheating on him, and even for gaining weight, but he couldn't forgive her for becoming so ugly. She smashed the door onto him, asking how he dared criticize her beauty. At that moment, Lai Fu pulled in by the collar, holding a blade. The man clung to Lai Fu's legs, calling him a hero and begging to be saved. Earlier, Lai Fu had been napping in a room after the operation, waking up startled, remembering the president's request for a membership card. Seeing the blade, he decided to deliver the card to the president immediately. The mosquito woman trembled, wondering why someone was carrying such a thing around. Lai Fu ordered the special squad to be notified of the beast's presence. One of them returned, saying they had already been called. The mosquito woman leaped towards them, calling them trash and telling them to die. The boyfriend called her trash for cheating on him. Lai Fu watched the couple's argument, dodging the first attack. The man was emotional, praising the president for saving him, while Lai Fu tried to pull him away. Then someone threw 3 talismans at the mosquito woman, saying they would purify the evil. As the talismans activated, tree vines emerged, immobilizing her. It was the squad of Cyclops interns who told the two to flee. They quickly subdued the creature and it fell to the ground. The analysis squad arrived simultaneously, confirming the creature's energy had disappeared. However, one of them noted something seemed to be nearby. The creature's belly moved and the map flashed with an alert, signaling a like on the video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell,